The invasion of Terra was supposed to be the easiest conquest in the history of the Velcrin Empire, I mean. Seriously, what could possibly go wrong? We had studied these humans for exactly 3 cycles, mapped every major city, cataloged their primitive weapons, and determined that their most advanced military technology was roughly equivalent to what we used for children's toys back home. The plan was simple, elegant, foolproof. We would deploy our atmospheric processors, suffocate their major population centers, and claim the planet before their governments even finished arguing about who should respond first. I was there when Commander Thrace stood before the War Council, his 6 arms spread wide in triumph, his voice dripping with the kind of confidence that only comes from 1,000 successful campaigns. The humans call their world the 3rd planet from their sun. We will call it Resource Depot 792. The operation will take 4 solar rotations, maybe 5 if we encounter unexpected resistance, but honestly, colleagues, I doubt we will encounter any resistance worth mentioning. The entire council had laughed, even me, and I was supposed to be the cautious one, the strategic analyst who questioned everything, but the data was clear. Humans were fragmented, violent among themselves, technologically backward, and completely unprepared for extraterrestrial warfare. They still used combustion engines for the love of the cosmic void. Combustion engines, we had abandoned that technology before we even developed writing systems, so we came to Terra on a bright morning in what the humans called October. Our fleet of 73 vessels descending through their atmosphere like dark clouds, blotting out their pathetic yellow sun. The initial phase went exactly as predicted. We deployed the atmospheric processors over 12 major cities simultaneously: New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Paulo, Lagos, Moscow, Beijing, Cairo, Sydney, Mexico City, and Istanbul. The machines hummed to life, beginning their work of converting oxygen into a nitrogen-heavy mixture that would render humans unconscious within minutes and dead within hours. Phase 1 complete. Victory was already being celebrated on the command ship. Then Phase 2 began. And that is when everything started going sideways in ways that still give me nightmares. The processors had been operating for approximately 17 minutes when the first anomaly occurred. Unit position over New York simply stopped functioning, not damaged, not destroyed, just stopped. The telemetry indicated it was receiving power. All systems were operational, but it had ceased converting the atmosphere. Commander Thrace barely noticed. Equipment malfunctions happen even with Velcrin technology. He ordered the backup unit deployed. The backup unit activated, ran for exactly 90 seconds. And then it stopped too. What is happening down there? Thrace demanded, his primary arm slamming against the command console. I pulled up the visual feeds from the surface. What I saw made absolutely no sense. There was a human, just one single human, standing on top of a tall building near the processor. He was holding something small in his hands, pointing it at our machine. The equipment in his hands looked absurdly primitive, like he had assembled it from spare parts found in a recycling center. Sir, there appears to be a human interfacing with the processor. I reported. Interfacing? How? Our systems are quantum encrypted with 17-layer security protocols. No primitive species should even be able to detect our operational frequencies, let alone interfere with them. I watched the human work. He was young, maybe in his mid-20s by their reckoning, wearing torn clothing and a jacket, covered in colorful designs. His hair was an unnatural shade of blue, and he had metal rings piercing his face in several locations. He looked like the least threatening thing I had ever seen. But whatever device he was holding, it was definitely affecting our processor. Deploy security drones, Thrace ordered. Eliminate the interference. 6 combat drones descended on the human's position. They were designed to handle military threats, equipped with plasma weapons that could vaporize armored vehicles. 1 human with a homemade gadget should have been eliminated in microseconds. Should have been. The human saw the drones coming. He did not run. He did not hide. He looked up, smiled this strain expression that showed his teeth, and pressed something on his device. Every single drone simultaneously fell from the sky like stones, crashing into the street below. Their power cores had been completely drained, shut down remotely by whatever impossible technology this human was wielding. That is not possible, Thrace whispered. That is absolutely not possible. But it was happening, and it was not just happening in New York. Reports started flooding in from all 12 deployment sites. Humans were interfering with our processors, not military forces, not organized resistance, just random individual humans showing up with improvised equipment and shutting down our invasion technology as casually as one might turn off a light. In London, a woman with bright green hair and more tattoos than bare skin was broadcasting some kind of override signal that turned our drones against each other. In Tokyo, an elderly man in traditional robes was using a modified communication device to corrupt our command frequencies. In Mumbai, a teenage girl with a laptop held together with adhesive tape was rewriting our processor's operational code in real time. How are they doing this? I asked, not really expecting an answer. We studied them. They barely understand quantum mechanics. They have not even achieved fusion power yet. How are they hacking Velcrin military technology? Thrace was silent for a long moment, his face cycling through several shades of purple that indicated extreme distress. Send down ground forces, full combat teams to each location. I want those humans captured and their devices destroyed immediately. The ground teams deployed, 300 of our finest warriors equipped with personal shields, plasma rifles, and armor that could withstand direct missile strikes. They should have swept through human resistance like wind through grass. They lasted approximately 4 minutes before the first distress calls started coming in. Team 7 reporting, our shields are not functioning. Repeat, personal shields are completely non-responsive. We are taking heavy fire from human projectile weapons, requesting immediate extraction. Team 3 here, our rifles have been disabled, some kind of electromagnetic interference. The humans are using our own plasma grenades against us. How did they get our grenades? Team 11, we are under attack by our own security drones. The humans have turned them. They are firing on us. We need support now. I watched the chaos unfold across 12 different video feeds simultaneously. The humans were not just defending themselves, they were actively using our technology against us. That human in New York, the one with blue hair, had somehow reprogrammed an entire squad of combat drones to protect him. He was standing in the middle of the street, surrounded by our own machines, using them to attack our ground forces while he calmly continued disrupting the atmospheric processor. In London, the tattooed woman had hijacked 3 of our transport vehicles and was using them to evacuate human civilians from the affected zones. In Tokyo, the elderly man had taken control of one of our heavy weapons platforms and was systematically destroying the remaining functional drones in his sector. The teenage girl in Mumbai had accessed our fleet-wide communication system and was broadcasting human music across all military channels, making coordination nearly impossible. It was a complete disaster, and it had taken less than an hour to pull back all ground forces. Thrace finally ordered, his voice hollow, retreat to the ships. We need to reassess our approach. Sir, if we retreat now, we lose all tactical advantage, I argued. The humans will have time to organize a proper defense. They have already organized a defense. Analyst, have you not been watching? Individual humans with improvised equipment are defeating our military technology. If we stay down there any longer, we will lose more than tactical advantage. We will lose soldiers. He was right, of course. The ground teams retreated, carrying their wounded and their damaged pride back to the ships. We regrouped in orbit, staring down at the planet that was supposed to be an easy conquest, trying to comprehend what had just happened. Run a full analysis, Thrace ordered. I want to know how they did this. I want to know how primitive humans with primitive technology managed to hack systems that took our best engineers 3 centuries to develop. I spent the next 6 hours analyzing every piece of data we had collected. The video feeds, the telemetry, the communication intercepts, everything, and slowly, horrifyingly, I began to understand what we were facing. The humans had not hacked our systems through superior technology. They had hacked them through superior creativity. Our systems were built on logic, on predictable quantum algorithms, on encryption that assumed any attacker would approach the problem from a foundation of advanced scientific understanding. But these humans did not approach problems that way. They approached them sideways, through angles we had never considered, using intuitive leaps and creative solutions that our logical systems simply were not designed to defend against. That device the blue-haired human was using, it was not advanced technology. It was a collection of human consumer electronics wired together in a configuration that should not work according to any rational understanding of physics, but it did work because the human had somehow intuited frequencies and harmonics that our sensors could barely detect, let alone protect against. The tattooed woman in London had turned our drones against each other by flooding them with contradictory commands in rapid succession, creating cascading logic errors that crashed their behavioral protocols. It was not elegant, it was not sophisticated, it was just chaos, directed with terrifying precision. The elderly man in Tokyo had recognized that our command systems used a modified version of human internet protocols because we had studied their networks and adapted them for easier infiltration. But that meant he could access our systems using his knowledge of the original protocols, walking through security we had built on top of Infrastructure we had stolen from them. And the teenage girl in Mumbai had simply guessed that our quantum encryption would default to certain mathematical constants when establishing secure connections, constants that appeared throughout nature and therefore throughout any advanced species. Technology. She had written a program that cycled through every possible mathematical constant until she found the ones we were using, then exploited them to gain access to systems that should have been completely impenetrable. They were not smarter than us, they were just different. They thought in ways we could not predict, solved problems through methods we could not anticipate, and adapted to new challenges with a speed that should have been impossible for biological beings. I presented my findings to Commander Thrace and the War Council. There was a long silence when I finished. So you're telling me, Thrace said slowly, that we are losing an invasion to a species that is defeating us not through superior technology, but through sheer creative chaos. Yes, sir, that is exactly what I am telling you. How do we fight that? How do we defend against enemies who do not follow logical attack patterns? I had no answer. None of us did. That was when the communication came in from the human governments, 12 separate transmissions, one from each city we had attacked, all saying essentially the same thing. They were not asking us to leave. They were not threatening us. They were inviting us to negotiations. They want to talk. Thrace seemed genuinely confused. We just tried to exterminate them, and they want to talk. Perhaps they recognize they cannot win a prolonged conflict. One of the other commanders suggested perhaps they wish to surrender on favorable terms. I was not so sure. Nothing about these humans suggested they were ready to surrender. But Thrace, desperate for any path forward that did not involve complete military humiliation, agreed to send a diplomatic team to the surface. I was part of that team. Lucky me, we landed in what the humans called Geneva, in a building they used for international negotiations. The room was absurdly primitive, just chairs and tables and primitive electronic displays, but it was full of humans, representatives from every major nation on their planet, all watching us with expressions I could not quite interpret, and sitting in the center of the room, casual as could be, were the 4 humans who had single-handedly disrupted our invasion: the blue-haired man from New York, the tattooed woman from London, the elderly man from Tokyo, and the teenage girl from Mumbai. They were not prisoners. They were not subordinates. They were sitting at the negotiating table as equals to their world leaders. The blue-haired man was eating something from a crinkly package and smiled at us. When we entered, "Welcome to Earth. Guys, nice ships, by the way. Love the whole ominous dark metal aesthetic. Very intimidating." His tone was completely sincere. There was no sarcasm, no mockery. He genuinely seemed to appreciate our ship design, while simultaneously having just defeated our entire invasion force. Human woman in formal attire stood up. According to our briefing, her name was Ambassador Okafor, and she represented something called the United Nations. "Commander Thrace, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. We understand you came to our world with certain expectations about how this encounter would proceed. We would like to offer an alternative arrangement." "You defeated our invasion," Thrace said bluntly. "Why are you negotiating? You could simply force us to leave." Ambassador Okafor smiled. because forcing you to leave would not solve the underlying problem. You came here because you saw us as weak, as easy targets. If we just drive you away, you will report back to your empire that humans are hostile, and eventually you will return with a larger force. We would prefer to find a solution that benefits everyone. What kind of solution? I asked, genuinely curious, despite the absurdity of the situation. The elderly man from Tokyo spoke, his voice gentle but firm. You have technology we do not possess, faster than light travel, advanced materials, medical knowledge beyond our current capabilities. We have something you apparently did not expect: creativity, adaptability, and a different way of thinking about problems. Perhaps we could help each other. You want to trade with us after we tried to conquer you? Thrace sounded incredulous. We want to establish a relationship based on mutual benefit rather than mutual destruction, Ambassador Akefer clarified. Your invasion failed because you underestimated us, but that underestimation goes both ways. We see potential for cooperation that neither of our peoples have considered. The teenage girl from Mumbai leaned forward, her laptop still clutched in her hands. Plus, honestly, your systems are kind of a mess. No offense, but your security architecture has like a dozen major vulnerabilities we spotted in the first hour. We could help you patch those before someone more hostile than us figures them out. She said this with complete sincerity, as if offering to help the people who had just tried to exterminate her species was the most natural thing in the world. The tattooed woman from London added, and your drones have serious mobility limitations in urban environments. We have some ideas about reconfiguring their navigation systems that would make them way more effective. If you are interested, obviously. They were critiquing our military technology. They were offering to improve our military technology, the technology they had just defeated. My brain was having trouble processing the sheer audacity of this entire situation. Thrace looked at me. I looked at the other members of our diplomatic team. None of us knew what to say. This was not how invasions were supposed to go. This was not how warfare worked. You did not try to exterminate a species and then sit down to discuss trade partnerships over whatever snack food that human was eating. But as I looked around that room at the humans watching us with expressions of hope and curiosity rather than fear or hatred, I realized something profound. These beings were not like any species we had encountered before. They did not respond to threats the way logic suggested they should. They created solutions where no solution should exist. They offered friendship to enemies who had given them every reason to respond with violence. They were completely, utterly, incomprehensibly irrational, and somehow that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. We will need to consult with our command structure, Thrace said carefully. This is not a decision I can make independently. Of course, Ambassador Akefer replied. Take all the time you need. We will be here when you are ready to continue the conversation. As we returned to our ships, Thrace was silent until we were safely away from human listening devices. Then he turned to me, his expression troubled. Analyst, I need your honest assessment. Can we conquer these humans? I thought about that question carefully before Answering, sir, I believe if we returned, with overwhelming force sufficient numbers to prevent any individual interference, we could probably succeed in occupying their major cities. But occupying is not the same as conquering. These humans adapt too quickly, think too creatively, and most importantly, they do not accept defeat the way other species do. We would be fighting insurgencies for generations, constantly facing new and unpredictable resistance. And honestly, sir, I think they would eventually figure out how to turn our own fleet against us. It would just take them time, so that is a no. That is a no. Thrace stared down at the blue and white planet below us, so beautiful and so utterly treacherous. Then perhaps we should consider their offer. A trade partnership might be more valuable than a resource depot. Anyway, I agreed, though I could not shake the feeling that we were not entering a partnership between equals. We were entering a relationship where humans would somehow end up teaching us more than we taught them, helping us more than we helped them, and generally appending every assumption we had about how advanced species were supposed to interact with primitive ones. Blue-haired humans' words kept echoing in my mind. Nice ships, by the way. He had complimented our invasion fleet while sitting in the ruins of our failed conquest while eating snack food from a crinkly package. These humans were absolutely insane, and that was why they were going to inherit the galaxy. Whether the rest of us were ready for it or not, the plan had been foolproof. Except it turned out humans did not care about foolproof plans. They just found ways to make the technology do things it was never designed to do. And they did it with a smile. I had a feeling the Velcrin Empire was about to learn a lot of very uncomfortable lessons about assumption, creativity, and the dangers of underestimating species just because they still used combustion engines. But that was a problem for future me. Present me just wanted to file my report and take a very long cycle to process everything that had gone wrong in the last 12 hours. Spoiler alert, things were about to get even weirder. 3 months after what the Velcrin Empire, now officially referred to as the Terra incident in all military documentation, I found myself back on Earth's surface, but this time under very different circumstances. No invasion fleet, no atmospheric processors, no delusions of easy conquest. Just me, a diplomatic aide named Corvin, and approximately 600 kg of equipment that we desperately hoped would convince the humans we were serious about this whole cooperation thing. The meeting location was different this time, too. Instead of the formal government building in Geneva, we were landing in a place the humans called San Francisco, in some kind of converted warehouse. It smelled like burnt coffee and contained more blinking electronic devices than our entire command ship. A handmade sign near the entrance read Hacker Space Collective in colorful letters that hurt my eyes. This is where they want to meet? Corin asked nervously, adjusting his translator for the 15th time. I was expecting another government facility, perhaps with security measures and proper protocols. The humans call this approach informal diplomacy, I explained, though I was equally uncomfortable. Apparently, their governments decided that since the people who stopped our invasion were not actually government employees, we should negotiate with them directly in their natural environment. Their natural environment is chaos. Corin muttered, watching a human woman ride past us on a wheeled board carrying what appeared to be a partially disassembled robot. The blue-haired human from New York, whose name I had learned was Marcus Webb, appeared from behind a tower of stacked computers. He was wearing the same torn jacket, though someone had added more colorful patches to it since our last meeting. "Hey, you made it. Welcome to the Mad House Coffee. We have 17 different varieties, including one that might actually violate the Geneva Convention. I would prefer not to consume anything that violates international law," I replied carefully. Marcus laughed, a sound that still confused me because I could not determine if it indicated pleasure or threat. Assessment. Fair enough. Come on, everyone's waiting. The main space. Oh, and watch out for the robot dog. It is mostly friendly, but it has boundary issues. A mechanical canine, approximately half a meter tall, rounded the corner and immediately began investigating Corin's feet with disturbing intensity. Its eyes glowed blue, and it made warring sounds that could have been either friendly or a preliminary weapon scan. The main space was exactly as chaotic as I had feared. Humans of various ages and appearances were scattered throughout, working on projects that ranged from sophisticated electronics to what appeared to be artistic sculpture made from recycled materials. Music played from somewhere, a rhythmic pounding that made my head ache. Tattooed woman from London, whose name was Victoria Moss, was explaining something about circuit design to three younger humans who were watching with expressions of intense focus. The elderly gentleman from Tokyo, Professor Kenji Tanaka, was having tea in one corner with what looked like a completely disassembled hover drone, its components spread across the table like a mechanical autopsy. And the teenage girl from Mumbai, who I now knew was named Priya Sharma, was typing frantically on multiple laptops while somehow also eating noodles from a container without spilling anything. "Welcome to organized chaos," Victoria said, looking up from her circuit board. "We figured if you are serious about working with humans, you should see how we actually function when we are not being invaded." Professor Tanaka gestured to some chairs that did not match each other. "Anything else in the room? Please sit. We have much to discuss, but first I believe you brought something for us to examine." Corin carefully unpacked one of our portable quantum processors, the same type we had used in the atmospheric conversion units. "Commander Thrace has authorized us to share this technology. As a gesture of good faith, it is a power generation unit capable of producing enough energy to supply a small city indefinitely." Marcus was already moving closer, his eyes lighting up with an expression I had learned meant danger for anyone who valued their equipment functioning as intended. "Oh man, is that a quantum entanglement matrix using paired particle oscillation? That is beautiful. Completely inefficient for terrestrial application given your shielding requirements, but beautiful." "Inefficient?" Corin sounded offended. "This is Velcron military-grade technology, refined over centuries." "Right, but you designed it for spacecraft with controlled environments and unlimited exotic materials," Priya said, not looking up from her laptops. "On Earth, we need systems that can handle variable gravity, atmospheric interference, and maintenance by people who are not quantum physicists. Your Design would fail within weeks under terrestrial conditions. That is impossible. This unit has functioned perfectly for decades in multiple environments, in space environments or controlled planetary installations. Professor Tanaka said gently, Miss Sharma is correct. The harmonic resonance required for stable quantum entanglement would be disrupted by Earth's magnetic field within approximately 19 days, perhaps sooner depending on solar activity. Marcus was already sketching something on a transparent board, his hands moving rapidly. But if we modified the shielding geometry, added some redundant stabilization fields using superconducting materials we already have, and maybe rerouted the particle flow through a tertiary buffer system, we could adapt it to work in basically any environment. Actually, hold on, this could solve that problem we have been having with portable fusion reactors. You have portable fusion reactors? I asked, confused. Our intelligence indicated you had not achieved sustainable fusion yet. We have not, Victoria said cheerfully, but that has not stopped Marcus from building 3 prototypes that almost work. The last one only had a minor meltdown that destroyed his entire garage. It was a learning experience, Marcus said defensively, and I did learn something important, specifically that containment field geometry is really important. This was exactly the kind of conversation I had been dreading. Humans were not treating our advanced technology with appropriate respect or caution. They were treating it like puzzle pieces that could be rearranged, modified, and potentially improved. Worst part was based on their track record. They would probably succeed. Over the next 4 hours, we watched as the 4 humans who had defeated our invasion completely disassembled the quantum processor, discussed its components with a mixture of admiration and criticism, and began sketching out modifications that theoretically should not work but probably would, because humans apparently operated on a different set of physical laws than the rest of the universe. So here is what we are thinking, Marcus said, finally pointing to a design that looked nothing like our original equipment. We take your quantum entanglement principle, combine it with our superconducting magnetic containment approach, add some thermal regulation systems we borrowed from our experimental fusion designs, and create a hybrid power generation unit that works in any environment and can be maintained with standard Earth tools and materials. That would require completely redesigning the core architecture, Corin protested. Yep, Priya agreed, but it would also mean the technology could be mass produced using existing Earth manufacturing capabilities, would not require exotic materials that cost more than most countries' entire budgets, and could be repaired by regular technicians instead of requiring specialized quantum engineers. You are describing democratizing technology that took our civilization 3 centuries to develop, I said slowly. Well, yeah, Victoria replied. Otherwise, what is the point? Technology that only benefits a few people is not really useful technology. It is just expensive jewelry. Professor Tanaka poured more tea, his movements calm and deliberate. In our previous conversation, your commander expressed concern about how quickly we adapted to your systems. I believe the answer lies in perspective. You see technology as something to be perfected and protected. We see it as something to be shared and improved. Neither approach is wrong, but they lead to very different outcomes. Sharing military technology with potential enemies seems strategically questionable, Corin said. Are we enemies? Marcus asked, looking genuinely curious. I mean, you tried to invade us. We stopped you, you agreed to talk instead of escalating, and now we are sitting here having coffee and redesigning power generators together. That seems more like the beginning of a really weird friendship than an ongoing conflict. The robot dog chose that moment to climb into Corin's lap, making sounds that might have been affectionate, purring or a prelude to self-destruction. Corin looked terrified. Bite likes you, Marcus said happily. He only climbs on people he thinks are interesting. Fair warning, he might try to hack your neural implant. It is how he makes friends. Your robot dog hacks neural implants. Only the Velcrin ones. Human neurology is too messy for him to interface with properly. Do not worry. He just wants to exchange digital signatures. Think of it like shaking hands, but with your brain. This was my life now, explaining to my superiors why I had allowed a mechanical dog to establish a digital handshake protocol with my colleague's neural implant while discussing how to mass Raju's technology that had been classified as secret for 3 centuries. The next few weeks established a pattern that was simultaneously frustrating and fascinating. The Velcrin Empire sent technology. The humans examined it, found ways to improve it that should not work but did, and then proposed applications we had never considered. Our medical scanners became portable diagnostic tools that could be used in remote areas without power infrastructure. Our communication systems were modified to work through Earth's atmosphere without requiring orbital relay stations. Our materials fabrication techniques were combined with human additive manufacturing to create construction methods that were both more efficient and more sustainable. And through it all, the 4 humans who had stopped our invasion became something like ambassadors between our peoples. Though they refused any official titles or positions, we are just making stuff, Marcus insisted when I asked about their role. Governments can handle the boring paperwork and diplomatic protocols. We are here to solve interesting problems and build cool things, but their influence was unmistakable. Other humans started arriving at the hacker space, bringing their own ideas and questions. A physicist from Brazil wanted to discuss the implications of our faster-than-light drive on current understanding of space. A doctor from Kenya was interested in adapting our medical technology for treating diseases that still plagued Earth. A group of students from Indonesia had questions about sustainable agriculture using Velcron hydroponic systems. The warehouse became a strange hybrid of cultures and technologies, humans and Velcrons, working side by side on projects that ranged from practical to purely theoretical. Someone had even started a betting pool on how long it would take before a major disaster occurred, though personally, I thought the fact that we had gone 3 weeks without any explosions was already a minor miracle. Then came the morning when everything changed. Again, I arrived at the hacker space to find Marcus, Victoria, Priya, and Professor Tanaka huddled around a small device that was emitting a soft blue glow. Their expressions were unusually serious. We have a problem, Marcus said without Preamble, actually scratch that. You have a problem and we might have a solution, but you are really not going to like it. What kind of problem? I asked, feeling my organs clench with anticipation. Priya turned one of her laptops toward me. The screen showed data I recognized immediately as Velcron military communication protocols, but the source location was wrong. We have been monitoring deep space transmissions as part of our agreement to help with security protocols. 3 days ago we detected a fleet heading toward this system. Not different signature entirely, but using technology that is definitely not from Earth. The Gene Collective, I said, my voice flat. They are a hostile species from the neighboring spiral arm. We have been at war with them for over a century. Well, they are going to be here in about 6 weeks, Victoria said grimly, and based on the fleet composition we are seeing, they are not planning a friendly visit. Approximately 200 warships plus support craft. Corvin, who had followed me in, made a sound like escaping air. That is an extermination fleet. They do not send that many ships unless they plan to sterilize a planet. Fantastic, Marcus said with that peculiar human sarcasm I had learned to recognize so quick. Question: would your empire be willing to defend Earth against this fleet? Because technically, we are allies now, right? The nearest Velcron military response force is 18 weeks away, I admitted, and frankly, even if they could arrive in time, 200 Jarn warships would require a fleet at least 3 times that size to engage with any reasonable chance of success. Right, so traditional military response is not an option, Professor Tanaka said calmly. Then perhaps we should consider non-traditional approaches. You want to fight 200 warships with improvised electronics and creative thinking? Corin asked incredulously. We stopped your invasion with improvised electronics and creative thinking, Priya pointed out. Granted, you were not actively trying to kill us at that point, which does change the difficulty level somewhat. Marcus was already pacing, his hands moving as he thought out loud. Okay, so straight military confrontation is out. We cannot outgun them, and we definitely cannot outrun them, but we might be able to outthink them. What do we know about Jarn technology? I spent the next hour explaining everything I knew about Jarn systems, their weapons, their ships, their tactical doctrines. The humans listened with intense focus, occasionally asking questions that revealed frighteningly quick comprehension of complex military technology. So their entire fleet operates on a centralized command network. Victoria summarized. Every ship is linked to a command vessel that coordinates all tactical decisions using a quantum Annable network that is supposedly unhackable because of relativistic encryption protocols. Correct, it is their greatest strength. Their ships operate with perfect coordination, responding to threats with mathematical precision. But it is also a vulnerability, Priya said, her fingers already flying across her keyboard. Any centralized system has a single point of failure. If we could access that command vessel, we could theoretically disrupt their entire fleet. You cannot access it, I said firmly. The Gene command vessel never enters combat directly. It remains at the edge of engagement range, protected by overlapping shield networks in defensive positions. It is essentially impregnable. Nothing is impregnable, Marcus said, and That smile appeared again, the one that meant he had an idea that was either brilliant or insane or both. We just need to make them bring it to us instead of trying to reach it. How do you propose to do that? By offering them something they want more than destroying Earth, specifically by making them think we have discovered the secret to defeating quantum annibal encryption. We broadcast a signal claiming we have cracked their command network. They rush in to eliminate the threat before we can share the information, and when their command vessel gets close enough, we actually do crack their network. That plan has approximately 17 critical points of failure. Corvin said 18. Actually, Professor Tanaka corrected gently, but the alternative is allowing Earth to be exterminated, so perhaps it is worth attempting the improbable. Over the next 6 weeks, the hacker space transformed into something resembling military command center. If military command centers were typically staffed by people wearing mismatched clothing and sustained primarily by coffee and various forms of noodles, humans and Velkrins worked around the clock on a plan that became more complicated and ridiculous with each passing day. We built a massive broadcast array using modified Velkrin communication technology and human signal amplification techniques. We created a false quantum network using enough technical jargon to sound legitimate while actually being complete nonsense. We prepared systems within systems, traps within traps, and enough redundant backup plans that even I lost track of which contingency was for which disaster scenario. And when the Gene fleet arrived precisely on schedule, we activated our insane plan. The broadcast went out claiming that Earth scientists had discovered a critical vulnerability in JAR command networks and were prepared to share this information with all species currently at war with the Jarn Collective. The response was immediate and predictable. The Jarn fleet altered course directly toward Earth, and more importantly, their command vessel moved into high orbit to personally oversee the elimination of this threat. They took the bait, Marcus said, watching the displays with satisfaction. Now comes the hard part. The Gene command vessel was exactly as formidable as I had described, shields that could withstand sustained plasma bombardment, point defense systems that could track and destroy thousands of incoming missiles, and enough firepower to level continents. But it had one weakness the Gene had never considered important. Their command vessel was designed to coordinate hundreds of ships simultaneously, which meant it had to broadcast constantly on multiple quantum channels, and broadcasting meant we could analyze their signals, study their protocols, find patterns in their encryption methods. Priya had spent 6 weeks preparing for this moment. Her laptops were now connected to enough processing power to simulate weather patterns for the entire planet. All of it focused on a single task: finding a mathematical backdoor into the Jarn command network. Got it, she said simply, after 3 hours of watching data stream pass faster than my eyes could follow. Their encryption uses prime factorization based on quantum state collapse timing. It is elegant, actually. The encryption key changes based on measurements of quantum particles at precise intervals, making it theoretically impossible to predict, but they are transmitting so much data that we can map the pattern of change itself. Give me 5 minutes and I can inject arbitrary commands into their network. Do it, Marcus said. What happened next would be recorded in both human and Velcron history archives, though I suspect our versions of events would differ significantly in tone. The Gene fleet, operating with machine precision under centralized command, suddenly received new orders, orders that told them their weapon systems were malfunctioning, orders that informed them their shields were compromised, orders that suggested their fellow ships were infected with some kind of digital plague and should be avoided. Within minutes, the Jarn fleet had stopped coordinating entirely. Ships were breaking formation, moving erratically, some even beginning to target each other. In confusion, the command vessel, desperately trying to re-establish control, only made things worse as Priya fed it increasingly contradictory information. They are trying to shut down the network, she reported, switching to manual control for individual vessels. Do not let them, Marcus said. Victoria. Activate Phase 2. Victoria's modifications to the Gene communication systems went live. Suddenly, every Gene ship was not just receiving confusing orders from their command vessel, they were receiving perfect imitations of their command vessel from 600 different sources, all broadcasting simultaneously. The Gene could not shut down their network without losing all coordination, but keeping it active meant drowning in contradictory information. They are retreating, I said, watching the displays in disbelief. The entire fleet is breaking off and retreating. Not retreating, Professor Tanaka corrected. Running. There is a difference. They believe Earth possesses technology capable of completely subverting their military systems. They will not return until they have completely rebuilt their command network architecture, which will take years. The hacker space erupted in celebration. Humans were cheering, hugging each other, and performing various forms of rhythmic movement that might have been dancing. Even Corvin looked relieved, though he was trying to maintain professional dignity. Marcus found me in the chaos, that smile firmly in place. So what do you think? Still feeling like humans are too primitive to be worth bothering with? I looked around the warehouse at the impossible mixture of technologies and cultures that had somehow defeated an extermination fleet without firing a single shot. I think the Velcron Empire is going to need to significantly update our assessment of human capabilities. Probably a good idea, he agreed. By the way, we have been thinking about that faster than light drive technology you mentioned. Priya has some ideas about improvements that might interest you. Something about utilizing quantum foam fluctuations to reduce energy requirements by about 90%. That is theoretically impossible. Yeah, we get that a lot. 6 months after our first failed invasion of Earth, I submitted my final report to Commander Thrace and the Velcron High Council. The report was lengthy, detailed, and concluded with a recommendation that would change the trajectory of both our species. We should not conquer humanity. We should learn from them, their approach to problem solving, their creative adaptability, their willingness to share knowledge, even with former enemies. These were not weaknesses to be exploited, but strengths to be emulated. The High Council accepted my recommendation, though I suspect the fact that humans had casually defeated both a Velcron invasion and a Gene extermination fleet influenced their decision more than my eloquent prose. 3 years later, the Velcron Human Technology Exchange had facilities on 7 planets and was revolutionizing how both species approached engineering, medicine, and interstellar relations. Marcus Webb had somehow become an informal advisor to the Velcron military on defensive systems, despite still wearing that ridiculous jacket. Victoria Moss was teaching our engineers about modular design principles. Priya Sharma had developed quantum computing algorithms that made our best programmers weep with envy. And Professor Tanaka had written a book about cross-species cooperation that was required reading in Velcron diplomatices. As for me, I spent most of my time shuttling between Earth and Velcron space, facilitating exchanges and trying to prevent well-meaning humans from accidentally revolutionizing technologies that had taken us centuries to develop. It was exhausting, frequently frustrating, and absolutely the most interesting assignment I had ever received. The plan had been foolproof, but humans had taught us something important. The best plans are not foolproof, they are flexible, creative, and willing to accept that sometimes the most ridiculous solutions are the ones that actually work. And maybe, just maybe, the galaxy was better for it.